Without further ado, let me introduce Dave Lupian. Dave's been with SCORE for about 5 years and is expert in product development and bringing those new products to market. Dave can tell us a little bit about your background. That would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. Well, hello, everyone. Some of you may know me, and I'm the guy that usually talks about product development and product commercialization. And it's really important because if you want to start a company, you need a product. And now that product can be a service or it can be something that you physically develop and you have to manufacture. So that's what we'll talk about this afternoon. So we're going to focus on part one today, and the next week and the week after that, we'll talk about actually developing the thing that you've invented or developed as a concept. You know, how do you manufacture it? How do you make it? How do you start? And then lastly, we'll talk about commercialization. And in this environment today with e-commerce and all of the many options open to us, commercialization is actually fun sometimes and expensive, by the way. So let's get right started and talk about me first. Again, some of you may know me. On the left side is where I spent my career, 40 years developing products for those companies. And I was the guy that was the gatekeeper. I was the guy that people came to and said, "Hey, Dave, what about this as an idea?" It was my job to really evaluate that idea and then pass it on up, sit with upper management and say, "This is what we have to invest money in." Since I've retired, I've worked with, the Magnet folks, Jumpstart, SCORE, and CSU has a wonderful school of business and entrepreneurial studies at the Weston Ideation Lab. So what we'll do is talk about service-based ideas, physical product ideas. Doesn't matter if you're going B to B, which is business to business, you're selling to another business. Or B2C, which is business to consumer. We'll talk about software and apps a little bit. For those of you who develop software, you use something called Agile processes. It's a offshoot of StageGate processes, which are used really for physical products and other types of products. And lastly, recently there's been a lot of activity around social enterprises where companies start up and profit is not necessarily their goal, and if they do make money, they grind it back into society in some fashion. For example, some of you may have heard of the company Bombas that makes socks. Much of their profits go to the homeless. Warby Parker and glass frames for your eyeglasses. Those are some examples of social enterprises, and there are many and growing by the day. So, how do good ideas originate? Generally, some folks just sit at a stoplight or taking a shower and say, "Hey, what about this?" Or they have a hobby, they're cooking, or they're in the hobby areas, and they think, what if I do this? Well, those kind of ideas are very difficult to get off the ground, and that's where SCORE really steps in and kind of helps that process of the fresh entrepreneur who is sitting at a stoplight. They have an idea, but what do they do next? So there's also the entrepreneur, existing businesses. So these are the small folks that run very small businesses, and they have good ideas also, but their ideas are the result of living 24 hours a day within their business. And we like to say they're immersed. They have the advantage in many respects over folks that use white space analysis who are in the corporate world. The corporate guys, some of you may know from your past lives or your current lives, that, in the corporate world, you're going to leave the office at 5, 6 o'clock, and you may not even think about anything business related for the next so many hours. Well, the entrepreneur is thinking about their business 24 hours a day. And he or she is always trying to come up with a good idea to move that business forward. So white space analysis, just as a side note here, is very simple. It's just hit them where they ain't, right? You have the marketplace and you have that opportunity right in the middle. Generally, folks in the corporate world who do this type of analysis before that idea materializes, the success rate is very high and the risk is very low because they have teams working to understand the competition and their pricing. Maybe that's the sales group, customer input coming from tech service or customer service or marketing, societal and business trends, what's going on in the environment around them. And lastly, current technology coming from the R&D group or the product design people. They all sit around the table and they all say, hey, what if we do this? Well, why don't we do this and take this one step further? Why don't we tweak our existing product like this? And they find that maybe that is a successful way to generate a new product, to make more money, and to extend their brand. However, the entrepreneur often comes up with the idea first. Again, because this person is living day to day, waking up with the business, going to bed with a business. They have this new product idea and they say, I know this will work. And they build their business case around that and then they launch. In other words, they do very little white space analysis because they know their category, they know their business so well. And why does this work? Because being a business owner is a 24-hour-a-day job. And you're sitting there immersed in your business. You understand where the new idea is, the new trends are, and you go after it. All right, so let's get into the meat of the presentation now. All right, so we have an idea. How can we lower our risk and improve our chances of success? That's the only two things we're really concerned about, right? We don't want to spend a lot of money. We don't want to take 3 years to develop this idea. And we want to improve our chances of success by hitting our target demographic, understand our customer, know exactly what that buying demographic wants in a new product or a new service, and develop it. So what I'm going to give you now is a 6-point checklist. Now, this presentation is being recorded, so you can go back at any time and review anything I say. But if you want to take notes, this is a good time to start taking notes, because these 6 points really are the fundamental drivers of all new product development ideas. It doesn't matter if you're the entrepreneur sitting immersed in his business, as we say. It doesn't matter if you're the corporate manager sitting in a Fortune 500 trying to look at your team and saying, I hope they come up with a good idea. Well, I'm going to make sure they do by asking them these 6 questions. And again, if you're sitting in a stoplight or just taking a shower, think about these 6 things. Number 1, most importantly, you have to solve a problem. Identify a pain point somewhere that you can address with a solution. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You don't want to invent or develop a product or service that, doesn't really solve a problem that is already out there. You want to be unique and differentiated in some way. Be careful here, because you'd be surprised at how many ideas I listen to or have listened to over the years. And I just simply ask, well, has anyone else thought of this? Are you sure this is innovative and unique? Before the internet, I tell this story a lot. It is on my mind all the time. When I was developing products for BASF Corporation over on Chagrin Boulevard. If somebody had an idea, we had to sit with our librarian and give her key words that she would research the prior art with, or the prior technology. And she would say, yeah, Dave, I can get this information back to you in 3 or 4 days, I think. And okay, sure, that's fine. Now I can find out if anyone else has thought of my idea within seconds. I can simply go to YouTube or the internet, and I can squelch anything that may have been thought of before, or I can improve anything that maybe has been thought of before. The internet has accelerated the pace of innovation in ways we've never thought possible. Have you talked to others about it? Okay, you may not think this is important, but the next one also. And I want to spend some time here throughout the course of this presentation and talking about how important it is to talk to others about what your concept would be, and build on that concept by getting their input. And part of that is something called customer discovery. And I will mention that and talk about how that can really accelerate your ideation process. Last, number 4 there, can you effectively describe what you want to do? Again, you'd be surprised how many people I talk to think they have a good idea but cannot articulate it, cannot verbalize what they want to do. Because ultimately what you're going to have to do is produce an 11-second elevator speech. If you want to sell this idea, if you want to be an evangelist of this concept, you have to understand the art of communication and how important it is to get that concept across in as little words as possible, as compelling and as powerful as possible. So those points number 3 and 4 we'll spend a little time on and talk about how that can really help you. Number 5 is understanding exactly how big this opportunity is. A single product is not as powerful as a platform where you can launch other products from a general concept. And we'll talk about the differences there in a few slides. Lastly, this is something that every entrepreneur, inventor has to wrestle with. Is my product unique? Is it useful? Or is it both? What is my level of innovation? Can that kick me into a patent, some intellectual property? There are a lot of products out there that are really unique, but quite honestly, aren't very useful. So if you were to ask me, Dave, what is more important, useful or unique? And I would naturally point to, you must have a useful product. You must have a product that can be understood and used by people with as little as education on the product as possible. A lot of us see, these drug ads on TV for all types of maladies and illnesses that we suffer. The drug companies spend a lot of the first 30 seconds explaining what the disease is, educating you that you do have something called restless leg syndrome. My goodness, whatever that is. But there is a drug for that. Again, being useful is more important than being unique. All right, so let's delve into the first topic there, solving a problem. What will people pay for? Let's talk about some never fail product examples. Anything that saves time. Any 2-in-1 product that you see on the shelf, shampoo and conditioner, companies like DoorDash, Instacart, any delivery service that's saving time in some way generally is a winner. And people love that. Anything increases personal or family safety. You don't have to think very hard on this one. Ring cameras, backup power generators, a battery, lighting devices, things that are aftermarket automotive products that allow you a safer ride in some way. Always a winner. DIY, do it yourself. Make my job easier. You can go down to the local Home Depot or the Lowe's and see plenty of lawn and garden tools introduced every spring to capture some part of the market that they didn't have before, whether it be Still or Husqvarna or anybody in that category. Personal comfort and health. Senior citizen-oriented products, mattresses, pillows, turn on QVC or Home Shopping Network, or look at Amazon. Any product that increases personal comfort and health, always a winner. Superior performance over what is currently available. This is an obvious one, right? The golf industry, the sports category, how many times do we see every spring, the latest and newest golf equipment guaranteed to hit your ball farther. If the engineers out there spend a lot of time with the marketing departments, finding ways to create superior performance over their current gadgets. Or gadgets. Better design, sexier look, newer features. You don't have to look very far for this into the automotive area. The OEMs make their money here by coming out with just a newer, sexier look with newer features, bells and whistles every season. So, number two, are you the first to think of this? Again, I gave you my example of waiting for a librarian for 3 or 4 days to give me some basic information. Now you can get this immediately on YouTube. You can go to Amazon to find out if somebody else is selling this product. If you think you have intellectual property, you can immediately find out if anybody else has delved into this category by going to uspto.gov. That is the U.S. Patent and Trade Office. Trademark office.gov. You can buy the competitors' products. Maybe you can tweak your design in some way to improve the customer experience. That's always a good avenue to approach in developing a product. Or you can go to a trade show. This probably is the most important and probably the most valuable in terms of gathering information about your competition, about the products themselves, about the technology, about you can even learn something about their costs. But if you talk to the right people, you walk the show and you get the kind of the lay of the land, as they say. Understand the landscape of your category. It's so valuable. If you want to go one step further, you can buy a 10 by 10 booth and put it in the trade show. And if you have a MVP or minimum viable product at that stage, you can show it off, gather input, feedback, and pivot if you have to. But the trade show is invaluable for developing a product and getting it on the market and commercialized. Okay, so let's talk about this area, talking to others about your idea. Here, it's so important because you're going to get positive and negative responses. What you want to do is understand the negative responses and bring the positive into a build where you're building the idea, building the concept, and ultimately arriving at a much more refined position than you were before you started talking to anybody. It also gives the opportunity to sell the idea. Remember, you're going to be the evangelist here. You're going to be the one standing in front of customers and investors and bankers. You have to sell your idea, sell the concept, sell your company. And it gives you tremendous experience in developing your 11-second elevator speech. The 11-second elevator speech, as you'll find out, is your opening line with any presentation. Hey, what do you do? What does your company do? What is this product? And you should be able to say in 11 seconds what your company does and what your product does, succinctly and concisely. And a little hint here, when talking to others about the idea, don't necessarily mention the idea. Focus on how the customer uses the current product or the current service, or the idea that you're talking about in general roundabout ways. Because a lot of people are fearful that, well, if I mention the idea, I'm going to blab it and tell everybody and they're going to copy me. Well, you be clever enough and smart enough to dance around the target, but get enough information to see how they view an innovation like you're thinking about in relation to what is currently out there in the marketplace. Now we want to brainstorm and keep talking, because as I mentioned earlier, what we want to do is blend all the input that you receive to advance your concept. You're looking for ways to improve your idea. Excuse me. And one of the best ways to do that is just to listen to other folks. You'd be surprised how fast and far you can take an idea just by listening. So when you think you have a solid concept and you're ready to rock and roll, now we have to go into a new phase, and this is called customer discovery. And this is where the rubber hits the road. So as a background, customer discovery was developed at the university level. University of Akron uses this throughout their I-Core teams that are staffed by entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurial studies program. It's used by Cleveland State, Case Western. Anytime students gather in teams to develop companies for pitch contests or a Shark Tank contest, what they'll do is teach them about how to do customer discovery. So what customer discovery is just simply answers two things. It identifies your customers and asks if someone will really pay for this or how they will use the product. So think of that is kind of like the driving force for doing this exercise. You want to know if somebody will really pay for this idea that you have, because you want to make money, right? And more importantly, you want to know how they use the product, because you finding out how they use the product or service will tell you how to efficiently design it to lower your costs and to make the highest amount of money possible. So this is the process. You go out and you find 20 potential customers, because you should know who's going to buy your product. Is this product, like, for example, if it's lawn and garden, generally it's going to be men between the ages of, say, 20 and 70, for example. So you're looking at men as potential customers. You go out and you prepare 5 to 10 questions about, let's for the sake of this argument, let's talk about lawn and garden weed trimmers. So you want to ask them about how often do you use a weed trimmer? How often do you do your sidewalks or driveway, or do you use it to cut weeds in the back of the house? Generalized questions like that. And the more you get people talking, the more information you will get unsolicited. good information on design, good information on usage, on durability. And so 20 potential customers, you may also, or you may just want to talk to 8 or 9, because you can stop when you get the same answer over and over again. And you want to do this until you're comfortable in understanding what your value proposition is. I have an idea. It's for this target demographic. I think I can do this. So how do I improve what's already out there? How do I improve the user experience of my customer? So after the customer discovery process is over, you have finalized your features, your benefits, and the value proposition of the product or service. And this becomes your minimum viable product that you can now commercialize or beta test. Certainly, your next step will be the beta test, where you want to build a prototype and release it on a very minimum soft launch schedule, where you can get even more information and more input as to how the customer uses this product. So as part of the vocabulary, you always, in these advanced product development courses and exercises and programs, you always hear the words MVP. Well, that is the minimum viable product. An example of this is software. They say Microsoft 2.0, Microsoft 2.2. The 1.0 was the MVP, the minimum viable product that the software company launches. It's only after user input do they go to 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, because there are inevitably bugs. There are inevitably improvements that can be made onto any software app or even physical products. So as a quick note here, I usually get the question, what's the difference, Dave, between customer discovery and just a consumer focus group? Well, a customer discovery is a one-on-one discussion where you are asking very focused, pointed questions about price, positioning, the product features, the product benefits. A consumer focus group is a group of people where you're asking very generalized questions on very broad concepts within the category or within the industry. Often B2B people, B2C people initiate business to consumer companies or projects initiate their development by starting with a focus group with a large amount of people, kind of like to focus down and narrow before they get to customer discovery, which is the one-on-one. So again, it's important because your belief in what will succeed will change. It will inevitably change. No one I have ever met, and I'll be very honest with everyone, not one idea that was born on June 1st survives until June 30th without pivoting in some way. They get input, they get a fresh perspective from somebody looking at the idea or the concept and saying, hey, have you thought of this? Or they do customer discovery and they get far into the customer discovery part and they realize we've really missed the mark. This is not what our target demographic wants. It's something completely different. And bam, that epiphany, if I can use that word, that shining light of the fresh idea appears, and that kicks them off into a successful concept or a successful idea. So here's something that you're going to have to overcome. And one of the tough parts about customer discovery is talking to strangers. I forgot my why there in customer discovery. So you have to learn how to talk to strangers. It's like, for example, there in the picture are two ladies that have an idea for a new restaurant. So they want to explore this concept with existing restaurants and kind of like see if there is an opportunity, a niche, a white space in a cuisine that may not be offered in this metro area or city. And they're just out there talking, talk to the waiter, talk to the staff, find the manager of the restaurant. I say begin with a current state discussion. The current state is, how have you found your cuisine being accepted? Do people like pizzas made this way? Why don't you do Chicago style pizza? Finding out their likes and dislikes, on the menu. Focus on the problems. In a restaurant scenario, it would be, well, what are your slow days? Why don't you have business on Wednesdays and Thursdays? Things of that sort. How would solving this problem benefit the customer? Ultimately, you have to think about who that customer is. And you're just going to have to delve into this, a very, very murky turf of of talking to customers, talking to people already doing what you want to do, and finding out the weak points that you can maybe improve on. The customer discovery process is going to give you your value proposition, and that's the reason why you make money. And I'm going to talk about value propositions now, because at the value proposition stage where you've developed you've developed this concept, and you're comfortable with your value proposition on how you're delivering value to your customer. Now is the time to create the shortest sentence possible with the greatest impact. And that's why I say earlier in the presentation, I said, write down your ideas. Try to put down on paper 4 paragraphs describing your idea. Then get those 4 paragraphs down to 4 sentences. Then get that 1 sentence down, or 4 sentences down to 1 sentence. Always shaving off the unnecessary redundancies in your description. Again, you want to create the shortest sentence possible which has the greatest impact for the person listening to your elevator speech or your value proposition. Here are 2 examples. These are new companies within the last 2 years. Soul Insole, their value proposition, their 11-second elevator speech, the fast, natural way to get relief from foot pain. Now, I have to applaud them because they are getting into a category that is probably one of the most difficult categories, domineered by Dr. Scholl's and others similar to Dr. Scholl's. But they say nothing about comfort. They're talking about foot pain. So that is kind of differentiable in this category, where they're focusing naturally on foot pain. If you have pain of any type, the Soul Insole will alleviate it. Nico Block, again, a very crowded category with a patch and every other device to help you quit smoking. They just say we're 10 times more effective. And I obviously think, you would think they would have the data to back that up. And nowadays they have to. The government is very strict on backing up claims, substantiating claims that you make in advertising. That is a value proposition that's hard to ignore, and that's why the compelling, short, sweet value proposition. Again, documenting, writing down your idea. It organizes your thoughts and forces you to recognize any shortcomings and weak points. We're going to gently move into the patent area. For those of you out there who think they can, who think that you can get a patent, It starts at this process right now where you're writing things down. You're continually shaping and restating your sentences to get to the most compelling, powerful value proposition possible. And I preach this a lot. It doesn't matter who I talk to, whether it be from Jumpstart, Magnets, Score. You have to be the chief salesman. You have to be the evangelist. No one else will. You're going to have to take that lead. So start practicing your sales pitch by writing things down and refining and practicing. So let's get talking about, let's wrap up here and talk about patents. I'm sorry. Let's talk about platforms or products first. I'm getting ahead of myself. What you see on the right there is kind of an adhesive presentation. A product, an adhesive is a single product, whether it be crazy glue or a caulk or sealant. It really comes from the chemistry that allows that to happen. So the platform is your ability to create many products. A product is a single item. Your platform could be a theme. Doesn't necessarily have to be fancy intellectual property, chemistry, science, etc. It's a brand. It's a theme. It's a way to do things. Your ability to use that platform and create a bunch of things out of that platform. I say a little hint there, investors prefer platforms because if one product fails, you can go to another product, or you can create a line of products, a family of products. And that's one way to boost revenue and create a sustainable, long-lived company. Examples of platform versus products. I just mentioned adhesives is the platform. The product here is tape, stickers, and posters. The platform is lithium batteries. Geez, it cars, appliances, electronics, chainsaws, going back to lawn and garden. The platform is somebody invented freeze drying a century ago. And look at how many frozen foods now exist in the marketplace. That's B2C. On the B2B side, whoops. I just want to move my, there we go. So I can see it because my screen was being blocked by the array of attendees. The B2B or service businesses, Subway and Chipotle and all the fast food, they build your own lunch. That whole concept of getting your on the spot order and having people make that is a platform that has been used throughout fast food. Geolocation services create Uber, Lyft, operating systems, DoorDash, etc. The platform is surfactants here. Again, I'm going back to chemistry. The products are soaps, detergents, particle dispersions. So you get to see that, by developing a platform or an ability to launch other types of products is generally the best and most profitable way to go, especially if you're looking for investor money. There we go. And lastly, let's move into patents. So the question becomes, do I need a patent? We talked about useful and unique. If your product is both useful and unique, wow, of course, you're going to get investment money. You can create an investment around the launch of the product by investing your own money, investing other people's money. I say the death zone there. Boy, as developers as a developer of products for most of my life, the situation I really hated to get myself into is, it's kind of useful and it's kind of unique. But is it really that useful? Is it really that unique? And you're finding yourself in that middle zone where you're pacing the floor at night thinking, boy, it's going to take $100,000 of investment money to move this product forward. But I'm not quite sure if it's that unique enough, or if the usefulness. For example, this product may be seasonal, may be only used in the wintertime or the summertime. It's useful, but not that useful. You see, so there's a seasonality involved there that investors or you yourself would have to rationalize in some way. A lot of people will use it, but not that many people where I can make, millions of dollars. I may make X amount of dollars, but I certainly won't have a wide-ranging demographic buying this product. So if you want to get a patent, I suggest doing this. Step one, the patent invention disclosure. Again, this goes back to writing down what the invention is, writing down what your concept is. It is a one-page Word document. It's very simple. Create a title, 2 paragraphs. First paragraph is the background. Describe the category and explain what the product is or what the invention is. And then the summary is, again, 1 or 2 or 3 sentences on your solution. You sign and date it. And if you want to move forward to get a patent, you can give it to a lawyer and start with a provisional patent. A provisional patent is you're spending the least amount of money to lock down your ability to say patent pending, and it gives you a priority date where you can put your flag in the sand, so to speak, that on August 1st of 2022, this is when I thought of the idea. So if the patent lawyer says, oh, yes, but we have an idea that was developed in Canada that was August 15th, then you have scooped them because you've locked in your priority date. That cost, if you want to go to the provisional route and you want to sit with a lawyer and become, develop a relationship with that lawyer for kicking you off into the actual patent where you're locking down 20 years of patent protection, that's a good way to start. It costs $1,000. A lot of folks I know who consider, have used LegalZoom. A lot of you have seen the advertisements. You can get away here for $200 to put a provisional patent in place. But, you don't have that relationship with the lawyer. It's just somebody that you're going to be talking to either by phone or by email. But again, it's a heck of a lot cheaper. And lastly, the lawyer or whoever you're talking to will ask you about a design patent or is this a utility patent? Design patents are generally weaker. They're based on a design. If you want to patent a new chair, for example, and you design the unique chair, this design, you're providing a function for the person who sits in the chair and a certain look. Well, somebody else can easily take that design and work around it. And that includes formulas for soaps and cosmetics. For example, a skin lotion or a skin cream. Now, you can go ahead and patent that formula, but you'll only have the patent on the formula components. You won't have the patent on the utility of the product, which is moisturizing skin. Ultimately, that's what you want. You want your product to prevent other people from using materials to moisturize their skin, because that will infringe upon your product, which moisturizes skin. Now, ultimately, you can't do that because, even water moisturizes skin. So you can't patent that. But an example of that utility where you're actually creating, it's the functionality of putting something on your skin to moisturize it. The design patent is simply the formula. There are other examples there, and that might be a little clumsy explanation, but I'd be willing to explain that further with anybody who would like to, send me an email, or we can connect through SCORE. So here are some do's and don'ts. I say consider a provisional patent. Before you patent anything, and please, you're going to be spending a lot of money here. So think about your commercialization strategy. Think about your competition and the category in general. If you want to license your invention, you're going to you will definitely need a patent, because the license becomes something you sell. But when you spend the money for the patent, you have to understand that you're going to be preventing others from doing what your product does. And that's a good thing, but it costs a lot of money to do that. You want to patent the broadest utility concept. Again, pardon my clumsy explanation there previously, but the utility is what you want to patent, not necessarily a design of a formula design or a mechanical design. An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. And before you begin talking to vendors, or before you begin talking to anybody, after you have your prototype, you want to have them sign an NDA. So again, this is at the stage where, after you've done all of your work on customer discovery and you have your value proposition locked down, you protect it by having someone sign an NDA before you enter into a discussion about buying services from them, or using them in some way to help you commercialize. And you can find an NDA template on the internet, very, very simply. You don't need a lawyer for that. And think about what you're protecting. Again, I go back to, you're going to spend the money, be very strategic about it. On the don't side, I'm very down on design patents, formula patents, because they're just simply easier to get around. You spend all that money, then what do you find? Some clever Fortune 500 R&D team just simply getting around your patent. And again, don't publicize your invention in a pitch contest, for example, until you sign an NDA and have that patent in the provisional status. So next, part 2 will be next week. We'll talk about developing your idea into a product and how to actually get things done. What are the steps necessary to move from idea to prototype. Thank you. If you want to have anything clarified or need a further explanation on anything, please go to our SCORE website, find the SCORE mentor. I know there are more than one Dave Lupians on the Cleveland SCORE team, and they're gladly and more than willing to help you move your concept from stage 1 to stage 2 and stage 3. So thank you very much for your attention.
Dave, thank you so much. I'm going to open it up to questions right now. Dave, maybe you should just stop sharing for a moment, and we can all look at each other. There we go.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So far, I don't see anything either in the Q&A or in the chat, but if you've got anything, by all means, please bring it up. And Dave's here to answer questions. It's 4 minutes before 1 o'clock, so your lunch hour is just about done, but we've got a few minutes left. Any questions?
If there aren't any questions at this point, and you need some time to really think about things, please consider, bringing a SCORE mentor onto your team and he or she would, will help clarify some of these issues and concepts.
All right, Dave, I think we're done. So at this point in time, appreciate everybody having joined us. Keep looking on workshops that are available on our website. Join us for some more in the future, and we will see everybody hopefully back here next week for the second session.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Right.